it pleases the court, my name is James, initial NT, solicitor, Ellison Michelle Solicitors. We represent the defendant, Mr. Giuseppe Donato. Your Honour, the material to be read in this matter is a letter of recommendation from Mr. Bob Hurley, a client of Mr. Donato, an affidavit from Melanie Donato, his wife, the criminal history tendered by the prosecution, and a bank statement submitted by Mr. Donato from last week. Your Honour, my client pleads guilty in relation to a charge of driving with a disqualified licence pursuant to Section 78, subsection 1 of the Torum Act. In this respect, Your Honour, we have two submissions. First submission is in respect to Section 78, subsection 2. The first one is subsection A, circumstances of the case. Your Honour, Mr. Donato was upfront and honest with the officer when he was pulled over. He admitted straight away that he did not have a licence. He also entered into a plea of guilty, Your Honour, at the first opportunity. He recognises that his actions were wrong, and he has offered to obtain a licence essentially at the conclusion of this hearing. Your Honour, I refer you to the bank statement tendered earlier, where I refer you to Mr. Donato saving up to pay for a licence. Mr. Donato is running a successful startup business in cleaning contracting. However, he requires a vehicle to reach his potential customers. This is extremely important, particularly in relation to his wife, Melanie, who doesn't work at the moment, so Mr. Donato is the only financial income that their house is relying on. In relation to subsection B, public interest, the defendant understands that it's important to keep an updated licence, which is evidenced by his willingness to obtain a licence at the conclusion of this hearing. It's also evidenced by the fact that he's taken this so seriously and taken actions to save up the same. In relation to subsection C, the defendant's traffic and criminal history, Mr. Donato has one traffic offence in the last 6 years. So that offence was issued 6 years ago while he was an inexperienced provisional driver. Mr. Donato has tried to make amends by his exceptional history, has no criminal history and no offences since, and also by trying to put money aside to save up for a new licence now. In relation to subsection E, in the commission of another offence, Mr. Donato was pulled over that night due to a failure to indicate while turning right. However, he was not charged by the police in relation to this fact. In regards to subsection F and any other relevant matters to consider, Your Honour, Mr. Donato relies on money and he relies on the business to make money, and it's a small startup business, and not to be able to access his customers would cause great suffering to his business. If you see a letter from Bob Hurley outlining his outstanding work that Mr. Donato provided for him during his cleaning contract. So the prospects of being unable to complete his work and therefore affect his potential livelihood are outweighed by the risks to the community by not holding a valid licence. Your Honour, our second submission is that Mr. Donato immediately seeks a valid licence on the basis that we seek the court's indulgence to waive any licence suspension period. Your Honour, I refer you to the case of Police Against Hand in 2009, paragraph 20, where the defendant had also committed a disqualifying offence under section 79, in this case drinking, within the last 5 years. Your Honour. I note here that Mr. Donato hasn't committed an offence in the last 5 years. In that matter, the court held that a restrictive licence could be issued so that the defendant could earn a livelihood. We request the court's indulgence that the court issues a restricted licence within accordance with section 87 of Torum. Section 87, subsection 5A1, a fit and proper person. We submit a letter from Bob Hurley outlining that Mr. Donato has provided excellent service in his business so far. We also show that Mr. Donato has not committed another offence after the last 6 years, which shows his safety and respect for other road users generally. In relation to section 87, subsection 5A2, hardship, we submit the affidavit from Miss Melanie Donato outlining their livelihood is reliant on Mr. Donato receiving income from his startup business, which essentially relies on Mr. Donato having access to his vehicle to meet clients. The restrictions we suggest on his licence are no driving between the hours 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. and the restricted licence period is for 6 months. We have no further submissions, Your Honour. Thank you.